Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mahesh Kumar. I'm the CMO at Acceldata. And today I'm going to share some thoughts on Agentic Data Management in particular. And the one thing I would like all of us to take away at the end of this presentation is not really about the product or anything. It's really about, does the data stack that we are dealing with today, is it the right one for the AI era and the agentic AI era? And I'm going to share some facts and figures to sort of support us really asking that question. A little bit about Acceldata itself. We've been in business for over 7 years. Our founders are from Cloudera, Hortonworks, and most of our clients are large enterprise customers, top banks, top CPG companies, telcos, life sciences companies, and such. And our really, the ethos for this company really was around data observability. We started this category, and the point about data observability is to be able to look at data at scale as it flows through your pipelines, no matter the starting point to the consumption zone, to be able to instrument that data for any number of metrics through all your transformations and so on. So it is like an end-to-end visibility into your data as it flows through the pipelines in near real time. And this we've been very successfully able to do at petabyte scale. That's the basic sort of the concept. And it has given a lot of enterprises major benefits in being able to have better quality data that feeds their AI models, better governance policies, more active governance of the information as it goes through, and avoiding sort of fines and compliance issues in that process. But more importantly, building sort of better models and better reports and such that give you more fresh, accurate insights. That's really been what we've been known for in the business for a few years. And we recently branched out into doing more agentic work, and I'll share some information on that. What is sort of the impetus for this? If you look at the data delivery reality today with what AI demands, there is a huge gap. First, this is actual customer data that I'm sharing with you, like before we came onto the scene and after. 16 days, customers used to take 16 days to do all your data quality checks, full QA cycle. Now, if you can imagine, in an AI era, if you're building models every day, essentially you're going 15 days of that model not being accurate because you're not sure if the data is accurate. Huge problem. Second, if you look at the governance aspect of it, to put a governance policy, enterprises used to take several weeks, meetings, consensus building, identifying exactly what controls to put, and then implementing that in the systems. Whereas today, your AI engineers and others are doing feature work almost every week. They want to fine-tune the model. They want to improve the model. Things are changing all the time. So what happens if there is this huge impedance mismatch between when the governance policies can be instituted and the speed with which your data teams are evolving? You introduce risk in the business. Even if you catch it 16 days later, now there is model rework, and there is rework costs involved. So there's a huge problem there. And finally, root cause analysis for one of those customers, their customers actually used to call them and say, hey, you have wrong data, or the data is not accurate. This is a data provider. That's like their business, essentially. And the problem was, for them to identify that root cause and fix it used to take weeks on end because it's a very complex data estate spanning 200 countries, 50 to 100 different data sources from each country and bring it all together. So to find a problem was very difficult for them. We've reduced that problem from weeks to less than hours, right? So now you can run these checks much faster, get to root cause much faster. And more importantly, with observability, you can actually prevent those things from happening in the future. So these are some things that we've actually created and built for our customers. And so now the question then arises, like in the agentic era, what is next for us as data management professionals? You can see this traditional data quality solutions built on SaaS platforms and SaaS frameworks. Data observability really unlocked the whole scale aspect of it. Now we could process petabyte scale data at every stage in the life cycle of the data. And that was a huge unlock because of that scaled compute engines that are available now, and that's one of the specialties that Acceldata brings to the table. So then if you think about it, on a scaled compute engine with the ability to observe data at scale, if you use the benefits of LLM, now you can do much more higher level tasks, business level policies. You really don't need disjointed sets of products anymore because now you have the capacity. You don't need a governance product and a quality product and a compliance and a catalog, metadata management. The basic challenge today is these fragmented set of products. I actually call it the alphabet soup of data management products. You got every one of those. And that's going to really hold you back in the AI era because the pace of change is an order of magnitude higher than before. So for the first time now, you have the ability to take autonomous action. You can converge the tools. More importantly, you can also converge personas. I'm not saying you get rid of roles, but a lot of times each role has some adjacencies, right? Like if you're a data engineer, you look left and right in terms of people that you work with. This gives you the ability to actually do some of those tasks that you would be highly dependent on one other person to do it, that you can actually do it immediately yourself because of the LLMs and the expertise that it gives. So now, if you're sort of bought into we need a converged architecture and some sort of a platform, then the question is like, what is the baseline on which we can build some platform like this, right? So I think the two things are very important. One is the scale of data, how much data are you observing, and the frequency of change. If you look at a lot of data management products, they're either in the metadata management space or in the governance space or data catalog. You got data quality to some extent. None of them have the scale that data observability provides. And the change frequency also is much higher, the ability to observe with observability, as you can imagine, than it is with a catalog, which is changing much more slower. So certain platforms are good for certain things. I think there were some platforms like the governance and catalog platforms are good for, I would say, the previous generation, even SaaS and just doing things in the cloud. But with AI and agentic AI, the need for doing things real time and much more real time causes us to kind of rethink, do I have the right framework and the platform on which to build a much bigger and better solution? The other aspect of it is, am I able to combine the operational data and the metadata? You need a platform that not only manages the metadata to then identify policies and rules and other things that need to be applied, it eventually has to be actually applied on the data. So you have to have the ability to actually look at the data and apply these policies much fast. So the ability to bring these two aspects together is something that's very important. And these are 5 things that I've actually listed that Gartner talks about 5 pillars of data observability, meaning you need to observe the data, you need to look at the infrastructure, you need to look at the pipelines, you need to look at the users that are using the data, and you need to have control over the costs of doing so and the costs that your data infrastructure is incurring. So we actually bring all of them together, and these are actually interconnected. For example, if I have a huge amount of data coming in, my pipelines have to be able to accommodate that sudden influx of data. If you go to banking systems and others, or even reporting systems, weekend or a Monday morning, there is a whole bunch of reports have to be generated, which means a whole bunch of data has to be processed. So are you able to kind of observe these peaks and valleys and be able to scale? And then in order to do that, if something goes wrong, you have to look at the infrastructure. I got a slew of data in. Is my infrastructure performing as I expect it to? Right? Likewise, a user writes a query that's inefficient. It spikes up the costs of your cloud data warehouse or cloud data lakes, right? So these are all interconnected aspects. So unless you are able to observe all of it all the time, it becomes very hard to actually connect the dots and solve these problems in real time. And honestly, to expect agents to solve these problems in real time, you need as much of this context as possible, things that affect each other. And that's why these 5 things have to be brought together. For simplicity's sake, I've actually put them into 3 categories for you. So as I said, we want to move from a fragmented world to more of a converged world where you don't have fragmented products, one for each thing, and then the ability, it's like giving blood transfusion from right hand to the left hand and you spill half of it in the process. That's what's happening with a lot of these metadata products and other things. It's like there's just metadata explosion and metadata duplication all over the place. And so to make sense of it is very, very hard. And so you need to be able to do that in a very holistic manner. And we really do believe this is where the world is heading in the future. A quick analysis of like what the capabilities are, to my point earlier about a lot of overlap of capabilities across various different products. I've just picked 3 of them: governance, catalog, and observability. You can see that there is a lot of overlap amongst all of them, right? So then the question then is like, where do I like really sort of lean for my future needs? Do I need a separate catalog that's manually input, or do I need something that's more real time, right? Do I need to catalog my entire data assets to start with, or should I start with critical assets based on the fact that I'm observing these pipelines? I know which are the critical pipelines, I know which is less critical, I know which has regulatory reporting needs, which doesn't, and the ability for you to actually then, use the right product. So I think this is some food for thought for all of you to kind of take back to your companies and your colleagues. So given this context, I've already talked about observability and such, and the fact that we bring a lot of context together. We believe the agentic system can actually help you cut through a lot of this complexity. If you have somewhat of a unified metadata sort of store with the ability to link and pull in from other sources and the ability to think through it and process it against real data, now you can build these intelligent agents that can actually do higher levels of work and automate a lot of the work that you currently do with a very significant team of people and such. That they don't have to be bogged down in like day-to-day minutiae of things, that you can let the agents do a lot of the work, but then they can focus on the most critical business tasks for which they find that they don't have enough time to do so. At the core of our agentic data management platform is what we're calling as a cross-lake reasoning engine. What does that do? It's a reasoning engine that actually looks at data across various platforms. Hyperscalers, Snowflake, Databricks, Hadoop estate, on-prem systems. It's got a very wide moat of what it can actually look at. Layered on top of that are really 3 major capabilities, right? First is semantic discovery, which is looking at what data you have from a semantic standpoint. A column isn't just a column about, currency. It's a revenue table versus a column about sales forecast. The way you treat these two are quite different in a business. Some have to match the revenue tables, right? You have to have a lot of matching and reconciliation happens. But a sales forecast, right, it happens in a little bit more in isolation. You're not trying to match the ledgers out there, right? So how you think about the reconciliation rules, quality policies, and things of that nature start to vary widely once you know the context. And the second piece is applying these dynamic policies that you discover in real time against your data. And final is actions, like what action do I take? When I see a problem, do I ask to get fixed? Should I stop the pipeline? Should I let the data go through? Should I quarantine the data and then let the pipeline run? There are a whole slew of intelligent actions that data teams need to take based on the incoming insights that they're actually got by looking at the data and applying the policies. So these are sort of the core capabilities. Surrounded by this is what I call as a context window. We all have heard about context windows as being very important. We're measured in tokens. In the enterprise context window, it's a little bit different, right? It's not just in tokens and amount. It's also about the actual context and the wide variety of type of information that you can process, right? So you have data assets, the ability to look at it everywhere. Knowledge bases, bring that in and being able to process that. And finally, you have other artifacts like alerts and tickets, right? So you want agentic systems to kind of look at a pattern, a problem, and then go back into the history and go, I think I saw the same problem the last time. I looked at your ticketing database. This is how you fix the problem. Do you want me to do the same over here? So there is a lot of history that can be actually captured, and you need the ability to actually bring all of this together and be able to sort of, piece it together in a very intelligent manner. And that's what agentic sort of data management does for you. On top of this basic core, you can add specific agents around, I want a data quality agent or a catalog agent. I want a data observability agent. I want to do AI observability, looking at model drift, what's causing the model drift, things of that nature. So if you have a very high-scale processing engine, the ability to look at context in a very broad way and bring it together in a very business-centric fashion. And then if you have these intelligent agents that can interpret that data and then give you very pinpoint recommendations on how to manage the situation, you have the makings of a very strong agentic data management platform. And that's really what we've built. And I'm going to take a little bit of time, like 2 minutes, to show you a very fast-paced demo. Please visit our booth. We are right in the middle, in the middle area. Sorry, I don't remember the booth number, but you can find us there. And take a more deeper demo. We were going to have demos every half an hour, starting at about 12:30 p.m. And then so you can kind of come in, every half an hour we do a more in-depth demo. But this is a very quick 2-minute demo to kind of give you a teaser, for what the platform looks like, okay? So the interface looks very much like a ChatGPT interface to start with. You go in there, you ask your questions. There are a bunch of agents that we built. And the nice thing is you don't have to tell the system what agent to use. There is an orchestrator that, based on your question, decides for this kind of a question, I need to summon these agents to do some work. So here is a person asking about quality policies that have been failing in their environment. And there is a thought process. It has summoned a whole bunch of agents, and the orchestrator kind of goes through this process. I've truncated it a little bit, but it takes about a minute or two for it to actually process and go through various steps. Right now, we're at step number 21 and 22, if you look at that, right? And it gives you sample responses for what it is finding so that you know what is to come later. And then here is a very quick failure analysis summary. This whole process took about 2.5, 3 minutes, right? And then it gives you what are the critical policies failing, and eventually it tells you some sort of remediation steps. The question then becomes, if I have business documents and things, like how do I take that and make it actionable? So here is an example of how you can take business-specific policies, very simply upload your documents into the system. It will read the document and then interpret it. Here we are taking a document by Deloitte, where they have listed BCBS 239 regulatory best practices, and we've thrown it in. Our LLM substrate essentially reads that document and then analyzes that for what are the various actions that you could take based on that. So you asked it to go look at that document and then tell me, what should I be doing, based on the fact that this is a best practice I want to follow. And you can throw 2 or 3 and say, hey, look at all of it in totality and then tell me what I have to do. So it actually goes through that process, looks at your metadata, looks at your data, and then comes back with a set of steps and that you have to take with very specific core focus areas. So it's kind of gone beyond just answering your question to kind of give you a nice little game plan, and then you can then go and execute the game plan as you wish. And at the end of it, if you notice, it gives you, hey, do you want me to tag all the assets? Because I found all these assets, do you want me to tag them for BCBS 239? So you kind of get a lot of work done in some very quick steps, right? So that's like a great example of using agentic AI, high-scale engine, a big moat of metadata, and the ability to look at all of that together. And then when you have these LLMs looking at your business docs and everything else, you get much more intelligent actions very fast. So that's quickly about ADM. There is one more demo I'll have to show you in a few slides later. The question then becomes, these are agents. Do I trust them to do the work for me? What are the checks and balances and all of that, right? So that's a very natural question. We firmly believe that there is this concept of an agentic autonomy curve, right? We would not recommend, even with our product or any other product, do agentic everything automated on day one. It takes time for enterprises to actually build that confidence. There is a certain best practice that you have to go through. A lot of that is actually baked into our product, that where you can, there is this concept of like prior generation of products, everything, and even in enterprises today, a lot of things have to be deterministic, right? You cannot have, very wishy-washy answers to things. 5 different probabilities. If there is a rule, there is a rule. It's very simple. Thou shall not, blah, whatever that is, right? With LLMs, things go into the probabilistic zone. You ask the question twice, you may or may not get the same answer twice, right? So you have to guide the product, and there are capabilities that we've built into the product where you can guide it. We call it guided autonomy, where you give the LLM certain freedoms to do certain things, but within certain guidelines, right? And you can encode that guideline as a workflow and say, hey, follow this thought process workflow, and within that, go ahead and do your magic and give me more information and context that I would not have been able to find, right? And that's how it kind of does that. So you go through in the loop where you're reviewing all the decision, then you're going on the loop where you're just looking at it overall, and then sort of just keeping an eye on it, and finally you get into what we call as the out of the loop. The role of the agent and the role of the person varies as your organization progresses. What we find with our customers is they are using our agents in certain pipelines. The agents are in the second phase. The humans are on the loop. In other pipelines and other situations, the humans are in the loop, right? So they are not really, it's not one size fits all. It's not one thing at all times for every pipeline, every data asset. You can actually move at your pace, and as you get confidence and trust, you would then decide, let me, try and let it, do its thing, and I can just be totally in a supervisory mode, right? So that's that about agents and how we recommend people deploy and manage agents even, within our product. And we have some processes and, capabilities built in for you to follow this step-by-step manner. How many of you have heard about MCP servers? Pretty much, most of you, right? So very important and valuable concept. And I'm going to share some insights on that. Today's MCP gateways, right? So you get LLM, query, that goes to the gateway. It has a semantic layer, tools, resources, and tasks. It then pushes it out to wherever your data needs to go. It could be a SaaS product. It could be a data lake, wherever it goes, right? The basic challenge with this is when you ask the question of the LLM, with this current methodology, you never really know how much challenging it is on the other side to get the answer. This model works for very simple API queries. Like literally whatever you're doing in API, maybe a little bit more sophisticated than that. Small amounts of data you get in, you piece together. I need to book a trip. Great, go here, go that, look at this, piece it together. No problem. Imagine where it says data lake, you're staring at petabytes of data and you write a query, and then it goes into that data lake, and now it's churning for hours together. The basic MCP model doesn't work in those scenarios, which is why we've invented what we call as MCP DC, which is modern protocol with distributed computing. So this is one of our secret sauces where because again, all the knowledge that I shared with you, the access to metadata and everything else, that when a query comes in, by virtue of the query coming in, we know based on the profiling and everything else ahead of time, is this going to be compute intensive? Is it going to be less intensive? So you get a better sense. There is some query optimizations already built into the MCP gateways because there are various ways to ask the queries. There are more efficient ways and inefficient ways. So all of that is already baked into our MCP DC server, so that when you go into your data lake and hit it, you are doing it in the most efficient way possible. Yeah? So this is a little bit more architectural. I'm going to skip through this because we're almost at time. But it kind of gives you a little bit more insights into why it's important to have the optimization part, why it's important to have the governance, why it's so important, because anybody can ask a question of the LLM. are you as a user authorized to go hit these tables and get information from them and give the answer to you? If the answer is no, the LLM should have the capacity, the MCP server should have the capacity to reject that request, right? That is why baking that governance part in to this becomes really important, because you don't have unauthorized access. I mean, you hear a lot of those stories, right, where you fool the LLM into giving you information that it might not have done it otherwise, because the MCP server is just like, go ask, right? There is no controls built in. So the governance part is so critical there, right in the middle. And of course, the performance, the ability to get the performance. So we just did a scalability benchmark on our platform that tells you, the fact that as your platform, the amount of data you push in, like billions and billions of rows, how many rows per second are you able to process through our platform? By and large, it kind of increases linearly. And if I were to give you like one more chart over here, you can see that we are able to process like billion to 2 billion rows in about hour to hour and a half, right? Which is extremely, extremely fast. One of our largest customers, just recently, we got this data, they processed 30 trillion rule checks in a month using our platform, 30 trillion. Because they are dealing with billions and billions of rows, like, almost on a daily basis, and hundreds of rule checks on it. So that was, a huge, breakthrough for us, just the scalability. Now, if you can imagine, if I added a governance rule, or a quality rule, or a privacy rule, or a security rule later on, you want the platform to be able to handle it. So this converged message sounds really good until the rubber hits the road, right? And this is sort of the rubber meeting the road kind of a test, is can you process these things at scale? If you can do that, I think at that point I have a very strong foundation to bring a lot of these other capabilities together. I'm going to share a very short demo on MCP, which is the last bit, and then, if you have some questions, I'm happy to take it. This is going from 0 to GDPR dashboard in 5 minutes. This has been sped up a little bit, so it's going to end in less than 2 minutes. So as soon as you ask the query, the system actually goes in and starts interrogating, use SQL queries, understanding exactly what data to pull, etc. Right now, it's going into the dashboard creation mode on the top right, trying to figure out what dashboards to put, what filters to apply. This is hitting 2 big Snowflake databases at this time, if just to, kind of tell you the context. And after it's done through all of that, builds a nice little README, and then voila, in 5 minutes, I've shrunk it down, your GDPR compliance dashboard. With drop-downs, filters, all of it. This is honestly absolute magic. This is a magical moment. When our CTO showed us, even internally, we know what the product does and everything else, our jobs literally dropped. This is months and months of effort within a large enterprise. Why are you able to do it? The scale of processing, the complete set of metadata that you have, the ability for you to understand what is GDPR and what is not necessarily to be GDPR, what is PII, what types of PII data are there. And by the way, we haven't told it anything. It's the LLM, because it brings in a lot of the expertise, it's able to understand all of this. And at the end of it, you can even actually produce an output and export this and everything else. So that's the power of agentic platforms. And please visit our booth. I know we don't have much time left, and I'm happy to wait outside and take questions if you have. But please visit our booth, the Acceldata booth. We're running demos every 30 seconds. Sorry, every 30 minutes. and please go for the free trial. The free trial has a sandbox environment, so you don't have to connect your systems. It's like with pre-populated data, you can just literally experience the platform without necessarily having to do any work, right? So you sign up for a free trial, we put you in a sandbox environment which has access to Snowflake, Databricks, and a whole bunch of other different types of data assets, and then you can just start asking questions and doing some work on it, right? So please, take advantage of that. And thank you very much for your rapt attention on this, and I really appreciate your time here.